What is going on, all you Pokemon collecting maniacs out there? This is Ryan, the Pika Pika Papa, and I love it when we start to see patterns that are followed at multiple different points throughout the course of this amazing journey that is Pokemon collecting and investing. And this is really exciting for me because this is why I do what I do. So if you're new to the channel or you've never seen this video series before, I warehouse a ton of different data points behind the scenes here in my various different Excel spreadsheets. And it's because, first and foremost, I love Pokemon collecting. Like, this is absolutely my number one hobby. I do it with my kids and I have a ton of fun. And number two, I have a love for data. And also, I know how hard you work and I work for my money. And whenever I spend it, I want to make sure I have the best information at my fingertips that I can when I decide to pull the trigger. And that's why for the last 19 months, we have been tracking the aggregate value of all of the booster boxes in the Sword and Shield era. So that column on the left, you'll see top line says BB prices, right? So it is the aggregate value of all 12 booster boxes in the Sword and Shield era. And you'll see we started tracking that in September of 2023. Now, the group to the right, that's the top 20 singles cards. So that is the aggregate value of the top 20 singles cards from every single regular set in the Sword and Shield era. So think about it, 12 regular sets, 12 booster boxes, top 20 cards. So there's 240 cards that are in that aggregate price. And that's important to me because you'll have singles cards that go up. You'll have those middle cards that for no uncertain reason spike up in price, right? You'll have all of kind of noise, but when you aggregate the 240 top cards from the Sword and Shield era, and we see how those prices move month over month, I think it gives us an awesome opportunity to keep our finger on the pulse of what's happening at the macro level. And it's been a ton of fun. We've seen all kinds of market shifts and dynamics. And like I said, we're starting to see some patterns emerge. And in February, when I did this video, this is the slide exactly from February, we started to see one of those patterns and we said, listen, nobody knows what the future is going to hold, but this is something worth keeping an eye on. Now, the pattern that I'm talking about is if you look in April of 2024, I have it highlighted in that blue box in the booster box side on the left, you'll see booster boxes went up 12.7%, which is a very big jump month over month. And then you'll see the month after that, if you look over in the top 20 price column over there, you'll see in May. So after the booster boxes spiked in April, in May, the singles cards did a fast follow. The singles cards spiked right after that. So in February, I noticed that pattern happening again. Look at the blue box in January of 2025. Incredibly aggressive growth in the 12 booster boxes from the Sword and Shield era in January. And that wasn't enough to call it out. But when we did it in February and we saw again another fast follow, where the singles cards popped up 20%. We're seeing this now. In that video, I said, hey, listen, maybe booster box price appreciation in terms of these big growths is a leading indicator of the next month. We're going to see the singles cards kind of fast follow in that space and pop as well. So we've only been doing this 19 months. Sounds like a long time. It's really not in the world of data. So I was very cautious when I said this. I'm like, hey, let's wait and see what happens, because the pattern that emerged after that, I mean, look at what happened. After April, after May, we saw things start to, after those big pops, we saw, the growth was still there, but the growth started to slow. And then we flipped into a time where actually singles cards and booster box prices went down month over month. You see July in booster boxes was down almost 2% month over month. August, it was down 0.75% month over month. September, it was down 1/3% month over month. And the singles cards is where we really started to see things soften, right? From June to July, it was down almost 10% month over month. July to August, again, singles cards down another 10% month over month. So we said back in February, hey, listen, if this pattern continues to emerge, the market might be softening. It might be a buying opportunity for some cards that you've had your eye on. So let's fast forward to where we are today. And the pattern is still holding true. It is absolutely fascinating to me. And I mean, think about how different the Pokemon collecting and investing space is now versus where it was in April, May, June, July of 2024. I mean, you can't even compare it. The sets that are launched now versus then, Sword and Shield, really, back in April is the reason everything spiked back then was because you could still get some of these Pokemon or some of these booster boxes from Sword and Shield at the Pokemon Center, and they just started to sell out. So when they started to sell out, booster box prices went crazy, singles card prices went crazy, and then we saw everything dip after that. But look at where we're at. Look at January, February, March, April in that booster box column right there. Now you'll see again up 30% from December to January, and then it started to slow. February was a little bit softer, actually a lot of bit softer, coming in at plus 2.21%. March kind of broke the trend. It was up 4.72%, but then in April at 0.4, it's directionally flat, right? So then March to April, it's flat. So it's a little bit different than the trend that we saw earlier, but it is similar enough that you can say it's following the exact same pattern. Now, the top 20 singles prices really is, I mean, it is almost spot on the way that pattern is being followed. Again, January to February, after that big booster box spike, right? You see the top 20 singles cards was up 20.87%. In March, significantly softer, right? Only up 3.43% month over month. And now in April, guess what? From March to April, they're down. The top 20 singles cards, you know, the aggregate value of that is down 1.23% month over month. So the big call out to me is this. If you look up above from July to August, the depreciation continued, right? We had 4 months in a row after that initial drop where the top 20 singles prices continued to come down. Now, I'm not saying that that's going to happen again, but I am saying it's something that's going to be worth keeping your eye on. We all know, or at least I feel very strongly, the Pokemon market, you know, has been a little bit frothy here as of late. I think prices have been really high. I think, you know, the supply and demand curve is way out of whack, so I think people are kind of piling in, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the next couple months, but that's why we do this video series, and that's why we track this information. So that's a great point for me to put a pause in this and say, listen, if you find this fascinating, if you're enjoying this and having a ton of fun, we do it every single month, so if you haven't hit the subscribe button yet, hit that subscribe button or give us a thumbs up. Those two small things go a long way in helping my small channel out, and, you know, really lets me know you appreciate all the work I do behind the scenes. So with that out of the way, let's look at a couple more graphs, which I think really kind of highlight what's been going on. So, you know, I always love to use graphs like this as a visual representation. For me, it's a lot easier than looking at all that red and green and numbers up and down. So the period we were talking about where we saw those booster boxes start to flatten out, I mean, we had about 4 or 5 months where booster boxes started to flatten out, and then it took off again, right? So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. It looks like, and there's no guarantee, but it looks like we're in the beginning of that kind of flattening out period. So maybe we're going to see Sword and Shield booster boxes hold flat for another 3, 4, 5 months. We'll have to wait and see. But then maybe we're going to see it spike up again. And you can look all the way back in September, October, November, December of 2023. It was a similar pattern. It seems like, at least this far into it, it seems like these Sword and Shield booster boxes kind of flatten out for a while, and then they spike, and then they flatten out for a while, and then they spike. And again, we're in the middle of a flattening out period. And if you want to know what the ceiling is for Sword and Shield booster boxes, I have no clue, but all I would say is I challenge you to look at Sun and Moon booster boxes. Different era, different print runs, like different whole collecting space. Obviously, there weren't as many sealed collectors back then as there were in the Sword and Shield era, so the scarcity is going to be much, much higher, but a lot of those booster boxes now are up over the $700 price point, and I think these Sword and Shield booster boxes in the long run can certainly get there. So very interesting takeaway, and I love following these patterns right here. Now, the next thing we're going to look at is the top 20 singles cards, and this is the aggregate prices right here. And as you can see, there are two very defined little peaks right there, those little points, and that's where, you know, the market, at least in that period of time, kind of spiked and peaked up. And then you can see that both of them afterwards started to work its way down a little bit. Now, the FOMO that happened in the original spike, like again, like I said, that's when Sword and Shield booster boxes were selling out on the Pokemon Center. People were flooding to Sword and Shield like you wouldn't believe. Singles cards were going for stupid amounts of money. Like, we all knew that was not a natural growth pattern. We knew it was going to regress a little bit. So it regressed, and then it flattened out a little bit, and then it worked its way back up. And I will tell you this, like you can't time the market as far as I'm concerned. Like, there's no way to time the market. So I'm not the one who's going to say, hey, you want to sell at the peak and then buy back in at the dip. Like, I mean, you could do that if you want to, but that's too much work. That's just not how I get joy in the hobby. And if you look at it, even if you had bought at the peak, okay, let's say you made a decision and you bought into the FOMO and you bought at the peak, and then you saw it crash months after that, and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I bought this card for $500 and now it's at $350. If you didn't sell it, if you had still held on to it, look at where the prices, like the prices are still higher than the previous peak and much higher than they were after it bottomed out after that. So buy and hold in this is I mean, that's the way to go in Pokemon cards as far as I'm concerned. You can play the buy and sell and flip and try and make a couple bucks here, buy high, sell, or sell high, buy low if you want to, but that's just not for me. So this is a really cool pattern. We'll have to see what goes on in the top 20 singles cards in the next couple months, but I think we're going to see it regress even further, or at least flatten out. And then again, when you think about the prices of these singles cards, I think there's still a ton, even at these high valuations, that are undervalued a little bit. But it's not all about going down. We talk about quality on this channel all the time. Big name Pokemon from big sets. So when you look at it, these are the 3 big cards from Evolving Skies, and they're doing just fine. I mean, as a matter of fact, they're holding on very, very well. Yes, over the last month, they're pretty much directionally flat, but still, if you look at the Ray right there, I mean, that's up 40% over the last 3 months. That is now an $800 number 2 card in the Evolving Skies set. And then, of course, you have the Moonbreon, and The Moonbreon's sitting at $1,745. That is a very, very high price for an ultra-modern Pokemon card. I'm not saying it can't grow more. Obviously, everybody believes that it can, and it probably will. But it's not surprising to see that it's kind of flattened out at that $1,750 number here for the last 3 months. Again, it's going to get hot. I do feel like it's going to continue to appreciate in value. It's just a very special, I don't know, once-in-a-generation type card right there. So it'll be interesting to see how high it can continue to go, or at least what that growth rate is going to be. And then, of course, you got Sylveon down there, obviously prismatic evolutions, as if evolutions needed any type of shot in the arm to be more popular, which it didn't, but prismatic evolutions has obviously brought even more light to the whole evolution series. And then that Sylveon, again, it's up 51% over the last 3 months. But again, if you look at it, it's starting to flatten out. So it's going to be interesting to see these cards. What happens with these ultra premium cards from these big sets with these big names is they're not immune to overall market volatility. They'll go up, they'll go down, they'll flatten out just like everything else, but it tends to be a little less pronounced. So if the overall market is down, say 10% month over month, a lot of time these big premium cards, instead of being down 10%, they'll only be down like 3 or 4%. Now again, they still move just like everything else as I've seen, and it doesn't mean that they can't possibly have big losses, but they just have a tendency to hold their value better over the long term, and that's why I always say I take quality over anything else when it comes to buying Pokemon cards. Now, a couple cards that aren't doing quite so well. Once you get out of Evolving Skies, I mean, these are the other two big chase cards in the Sword and Shield era, the Gengar from Fusion Strike, the Giratina from Lost Origin, and as you can see, I mean, that Gengar from Fusion Strike, it's down 1.79% over the last 3 months, but if you look over the last 2 months, I mean, it's down from a high of almost $780 down to $642. Again, $642 is still a ridiculously high price for that Pokemon card, but guess what? It is down over the last 2 months, so I think it's starting to come and correct a little bit. Now, if you look at the graph, you can see it's starting to tail off just a little bit, so it might be finding a lot of support in that $650 range. We'll have to keep an eye on it, but it is down significantly over the last 2 months. Same thing with that Giratina. Now that's more over like the last 6 weeks where we've seen the price drop. But again, I mean, it was all the way up at $720. Now it's down to $620. That's a $100 drop over the last 6 weeks. Doesn't take away from the awesomeness of the card. Doesn't take away from the long-term prospects of it. I still think this is going to be the #3 biggest chase card if you think about it in terms of the chase cards of the top sets in the Sword and Shield era. So it's going to do just fine, but it's interesting to see how the market is moving right now. Then, of course, you got the Lugia from Silver Tempest, another one come way up there. I mean, the high was all the way over the $300 range, and now it's down to $285. Not a huge drop, but just a little bit of softness there. But again, there's some cards that are still performing relatively well when you look at it. That Charizard alt art from Brilliant Stars, I've talked about it till I'm blue in the face. I'm not going to say it again, but man, I have been saying it for at least a year now. I felt like that card in that set is incredibly undervalued. So even though the Sword and Shield market as a whole is starting to soften a little bit, even the chase cards that we see flattening out, that Charizard has been on a tear over the last 3 months, up almost 14%. Blaziken card, again, down just a little bit over the last month, but it's holding its water pretty darn good. I won't say it's directionally flat. It's down a couple percentage points, but again, a stunning card that's holding its water. And even though we don't include it because we only look at the 12 regular sets, I mean, that Charizard V from Champion's Path, that's a stunning card right there. And again, not up a ton. It's up 4% over the last 3 months, but it's a big name in Charizard from a specialty set. Specialty sets traditionally perform really, really well. So when you put all that together, even though the market's been a little choppy here as of late, it's holding its water and it's doing really well. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed this. That's everything. I wanted to throw some singles cards in here. I wanted to talk about the patterns, talk about kind of like the macro level in the Sword and Shield era. And I'll tell you right now, if you enjoy this video, I have a very similar review for Scarlet and Violet that is going to be coming up next week. It is going to be fantastic. We're going to do some super deep dives. Instead of looking at things at the macro level, which obviously we'll do, we're going to look at the individual sets and see how those top 20 cards have moved month over month. And it is fascinating. I'm going to tell you right now, it is a bloodbath in the Scarlet and Violet era. And I can't wait to share it with you. I can't wait to keep these patterns going. And as I always say, I hope you find value in this. And if you do, hit that subscribe button or give us a thumbs up. But most importantly, I hope you have an awesome rest of your day. Thank you so much. See you, everybody. Bye.